driving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Raw Recovery, a Trudging Together podcast. My name is Dion Miller, and I'm going to be your host today. Wow, it's been a minute. It has been a minute since I did a podcast. Had to do some moving, but we are back at it here on February 14th, 2023. And it's Valentine's Day, and I've got a very special guest. My guest today is Stacy K, and I have known Stacy since I was like 19 years old. I've known her for a long time. We got to know each other in the rooms back when I was younger, and Stacy was one of the people that was kind of closer to my age, so I followed her around a lot. I'd even show up at her house. Hey, you need anything done? I'm just headed to the club or whatever. And I moved back up north and went to a meeting on Friday, a primary, and Stacy was there. We were able to talk. We had a great conversation this weekend. So I want to introduce Stacy. Stacy, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking your time today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This is the weird part that we come to because it's always fun. It feels weird because it's like, what do you do? What do you do next? Right? So everybody knows, anybody that listens to me knows the show's not about me. The show's about Stacy. All right. This is her podcast. So I'm going to relinquish control now. I'm going to hand it over to Stacy. Stacy's going to tell her story, and we're going to have a great time. Thank you again, Stacy, for being willing and for sharing your story. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you. So my name is Stacy, and my sober date is August 3rd, 2016. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
What love day.
Yeah.
Love is everything, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Tell my story. So thank you for having me on the show. I think it's so very important to get that message out there, and to hopefully have somebody hear something that they, that'll bring them into the rooms and get them sober.
Yep.
Because that alcoholic drug life isn't the easiest life, and it's a very lonely life. So again, I have a little over 6 years sober, and I'm grateful for the people in the rooms. I was introduced to Primary Purpose and to AA through a family member that had gone into the program years before I had, and I was in a very dark place. My life was chaos, unstable, and I was confused. I was confused at why things were so bad. I grew up in a home that had alcoholism in it. I didn't. I definitely went the wrong way, and that wrong way felt very, very normal to me. And I'm pretty sure I was defeated with everything that had happened in my life. Alcohol wasn't something that when I took my first drink that I loved. Actually, because my mother was an alcoholic, I despised alcohol. My first drunk was at US on Wheels. A friend bring it in a hairspray bottle, and lo and behold, my mom had just got out of rehab that night. So she got to come home from rehab to her drunk daughter. It was was purple passion or some sort of, I don't know what
Okay.
it was, but
Yeah, one of those punches or yeah.
yeah, it was awful. It was
Mhm.
awful. The weird thing is I remember the whole thing. And
Okay.
I got home and I had to be 13 years old, 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah.
And I got home and I threw up the whole night. And it
Mhm.
wasn't one of those things where I was like, yes, I want to do this again. I love that feeling. It was, oh my God, like, what is
Yeah.
this? And it was a while before I had another drink, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
But I was humiliated. It was awful. Um, tried drugs, recreation. I can't even say the word.
It's all good.
Recreationally. I tried everything. Yeah, but to be honest, I think drugging was my choice. It was
Okay.
what I liked. I loved that upper feeling. I loved
Mm.
it was the escape of
Yeah.
my life, my dysfunctions, and everything else. I got pregnant early. I was 16 years old.
Mhm.
And before I got pregnant, I think I was avidly on acid every day of my life.
Yeah.
But I met somebody, and my first God, that was my first God. And
Okay.
yeah, I got pregnant 3 months later and had my son. And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I didn't do drugs when I was pregnant, so that was good.
Awesome.
School wasn't a priority at all.
Yeah.
Ditching was, yeah, I mean, I don't know. School was hard. And
Sure.
so I left.
School was a place to meet my friends so we could go party. It was just
Yes,
a meeting place.
that's exactly what it
Yeah.
was. It was never, I never took it seriously by any
Yeah.
means. But anyway, so I had my son at 16 years old, and I got kicked out of my house.
Okay.
And so I moved in with him. And I love that little boy. Oh my God.
Mhm.
He was adorable, and I was scared,
Okay.
I didn't do drugs and for a long time or
Okay.
drink. I raised my kid, and that was it.
Yeah. Sounded like you were a little scared straight for a little bit.
Yeah, I was
Like
very
you were,
scared.
it's like, okay, I'm seeing some responsibilities here.
Yep.
And even those responsibilities are kind of interrupting that, I'm noticing, which which is why you probably later on knew what to do. So,
Yeah, it was life for my son it was looking back, having him as young as I did, and then I had my daughter at 19 years old,
okay.
not too long after. I mean, it was great. I mean, we were together. But now I can see why we probably shouldn't have a kid at 16 years old. There was a lot of dysfunction with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a stay-at-home mom. But somewhere during that time in the family, his family member owned a bar. And so that was every Friday night we would go to that bar for steak dinner.
Okay.
And so it was, alcohol was just ready and available.
Yeah.
Because that was the lifestyle.
Yep.
So, every now and then we would go out and party, and it did. I guess having my kids definitely. I didn't like that hungover feeling. I knew I had to wake up with those babies, and
Yeah.
it was rough. So I didn't. I managed my drinking back then,
Okay.
and but anyway, so moving forward, we got divorced, and I think that was when the divorce happened. Immediately, I started going to the bar, and
Okay.
that was when I think that was when my drinking really took off.
How old
And
were you when you got divorced?
how old was I? 23.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys were together for 8 years there. So
Yep.
that's
But
pretty
it
good
was,
for a 16-year-old. I have to say that is.
yeah, it was. I mean, it lasted as long as it did, and it wasn't terrible. I think that it was just we were young, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of responsibility,
Yep.
on both ends. So once that marriage failed, and the divorce happened, which was actually on my birthday, close to my birthday. The
I
first
got
thing,
divorced on my birthday too.
isn't that weird?
My
The actual
my
divorce didn't
ex-wife
happen.
was all, "I'm sorry, it was the only day." I'm like, "No, that's a great birthday present."
Yeah, it was one of those things where I got flowers, and he asked if that was, something that would, and it was just not. It was done.
Yeah,
But again, we were young, so
yeah.
but I just remember, drinking. We started drinking heavily.
Okay.
We had friends at that bar. We had family
Yeah.
at that bar, and so
Mm-hmm.
what else could we do? I mean, that was it. There was
Good times, camaraderie. Yeah, brotherhoods. Yeah.
instant freedom, right? And
Yeah.
then downtown, I had a friend take me downtown, and it was on. And I remember it was probably the start of my alcoholism actively.
Okay.
I realized that I was a dry drunk, just waiting to pick up that drink. But I
Okay.
was definitely in denial. But either way, I started drinking really heavy. And in that time of the party after the divorce, I met my second husband, and
Mm-hmm.
that didn't go very well. I'm not going to. It didn't. It was there was molestation involved,
Okay.
and that was it didn't. That marriage didn't last very long at all.
Okay.
And there was definitely alcoholism involved in that.
Okay.
And so it was something that kept me drinking, because that guilt of that husband and what he did to my family.
Yep.
And it also tore me and my first husband apart.
Yeah.
So then we have moving on next to I think I was working. I kept my jobs. That second husband, I remember I felt like my world turned upside down at that moment.
Yeah.
And the hell of it all, and
Yep.
what my daughter had to go through, and what it was just, I think that I felt like somebody punched me, and
Yeah.
but anyway, so to deal with that, I started partying again, and I met a man, and it wasn't too far away from that time that 9 months later I had my son, another
Okay.
son.
All right.
And he was a drug addict and went to jail. So out of desperation,
Uh-huh.
I went ahead and gave him up for adoption, and
Okay.
started the adoption procedures to find a family that could take care of him.
Yeah. Ouch.
So that was hard.
Yeah.
But I involved the kids as much as I could. So anyway, I had him, and I found a family, and he was amazing. The baby was amazing. I wanted them to have a child, and they did. And I knew that we picked a family that took good care of him, and
Good.
yeah, and they still keep in touch. I talk to him all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes, we go through these things, there's no manual,
No.
and, from what I'm hearing, you did the right thing, even though it hurt. I mean, it still hurts. But I'm glad to hear that relationship is healed. I find that very hopeful.
Somewhat. I think that, at least I have the communication with the parents. There was a lot of lies that were involved in that as well,
Okay.
which I have definitely amended. He's older now. I do talk to him every now and then, but
Okay.
I hope someday that he'll come and ask those questions
Okay.
that will give him some freedom, and maybe whatever it is that he needs to be able to move on in life. And they are amazing people.
That's fantastic.
Yep. And then I met my third husband, and it was trying to get away from the the disgustingness of the second marriage. And immediately that was I mean, looking back now, I had to sit at that bar and have quite a few drinks in order to meet this man. And
Okay.
he came in and we had our night, and that was the start of a very abusive relationship, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Okay.
Wasn't allowed to see my kids very often with him.
Okay.
There was, threw a camera at my head, hospital, beat up my car quite a bit, and multiple phones, on the ground, kicked, whatever it is, abuse.
Yeah.
I sent my kids to live with their grandfather because I couldn't, I didn't want them in those rooms, and I didn't
Yeah.
listening to him verbally abuse me. And that was the separation from my children.
Okay.
To get to see them on Mother's Day. I got to see them in a car once.
Yeah.
And he was, I couldn't get away.
All right.
There was times I definitely feared for my life. And it was, I don't know what it was, but, my friends at work, throughout this time, throughout the 3 marriages, I did keep jobs, full-time
Okay.
jobs. And, drinking was, there wasn't a lot of drinking. I can't say, that I was drinking every night. There was Adderall abuse. That was definitely
Okay.
my, pill, my meth pill, I like to call it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, that's because you like that upper. I
right.
like the downers.
Yeah.
But sometimes it depends on who you are. But
Right.
I mean, the addiction is still the same. It still ends up, and that doesn't mean, it's like saying, I didn't get in trouble every time I drank, but every time I was in trouble, I had been drinking.
Right.
So.
Yep.
Or using.
Exactly. Yeah, so Adderall was my best friend. I mean, on a daily basis, and during that time, since this is about drugs and alcohol, my morning routine was to wake up and drink a couple pots of coffee, buy 3 or 4 energy drinks, go to the gas station and get some spike pills and that Adderall. That was daily for years. And
wow.
I know. And I don't even, but I needed it because to get my kids up to go to school, or whatever it was that I was doing, I couldn't function without all of that. And, so anyway, so there was Adderall abuse there as well. And I think it was finally, I was also, to just top off the dysfunction, I found gambling. And in gambling, I didn't need another reason to be bad with money, and I found one, and it wasn't like I was making that much anyway. So, I don't know. And I was also, it's, I don't know. I don't understand to this day why I was the way that I was, but it happened, and that's what it was. So in 2012, I finally left. We finally split for good, and I got away from my third husband. And that was the end of the beginning, and of my true alcoholism. I was free. And what got me away from my third husband was my gambling. I think I self-sabotaged. He was upset about spending $200 in Central City, and I was like, thank God, go. If that's what it took. And I was, my gambling was at its highest point at that time. But at least it got me away from this marriage.
I'm almost grateful it happened.
Yep.
In a sense, because and I know people may think, normies may think we're crazy, but they don't understand. If you don't live the life, then you can't explain it to them.
Oh, I was crazy. When I speak out loud about my life, I don't, I wish I could come up with the why,
Yeah.
but I, gratefully AA popped my head out of my hiney along with some other things, but I have a lot more clarity than I did.
Good.
But I got away from that marriage in 2013, and my daughter instantly moved in with me, or at least the kids were around. I got to be a part of my son's graduation,
Awesome.
and I started hanging out with my ex-husband and my kid's dad, and they were still at that bar.
Okay.
Still sitting there. And I was fortunate that they, I was really happy because I at least had some sort of familiar faces.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but my drinking, wow, it didn't take very long before, I picked up that drink and I started partying with everybody, and I was hurt. I was devastated. I didn't understand, the marriages and what was wrong with me and my life. And I think I went on a drinking binge for a good 8 months.
Okay.
And I remember most of it. I mean, I got to go to concerts. I was always looking over my shoulder, wondering, am I, where's that man? Because we definitely weren't divorced. We were separated.
Okay.
And I didn't hear from him. So that was even, and to be able to be a part of my kids' life, and I got to, see my kids more because they were, I don't know if they were of drinking age, but I got to definitely hang out with them and be a part of their life, and get to go to the graduation, good or bad, indifferent. But my alcohol tolerance, I don't think I've ever drank that much in my life.
Yeah.
And I remember looking around the bar and I was like, is this it? What is, I had fun. I did have some fun, but I ended up losing my job that I'd had for 6 years. I was, my gambling was at its highest. Drinking kind of subsided my gambling.
Okay.
And my shopping problem, actually. Okay. So that was good because I couldn't get off the bar stool. But I don't know when that drinking and that time in my life went really bad, but I just remember one day, or one night, I don't even know if it was day or night, and I was looking at this refrigerator, and I wanted that whiskey that was in that refrigerator, and I was shaking. And I knew that alcohol had finally taken over my life. And lo and behold, I thought that, I was just always around alcoholics, but the truth is I was a dry alcoholic and a dry drunk, waiting for that drink, and life gave me a reason, along with gambling, shopping, and dysfunctional behavior. So, I at that time, I didn't actually, let me back up. I didn't lose my job right away, but something had happened. I was at work one day, and I was standing up I got up out of my chair, and I got this pain, and I've never felt a pain like that in my life. And this was during my 8-month drinking binge. And it was close to Thanksgiving. And me and my daughter went shopping for Thanksgiving. And if you can imagine, all I just wanted to do was be with my kids. And I couldn't walk. And I'm like, God, this is so weird. I don't understand. Like, the pain's not going away.
Yeah.
So the pain got worse daily. I couldn't work. So that I actually took off work, went on disability, didn't get disability check because of course you didn't. So I was practically starving. But my eye swelled shut. And I kept going to doctors because I'm like, I can't open my eye. If I were to open my eyes, I would see double. And I had excruciating pain. It didn't just stop in my leg or my glutes. It went throughout my whole body. And I went to the top neurologist, and they couldn't find anything wrong. So 3 months, I lost ability to, I couldn't go to the bathroom. I was crawling on a floor. I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I was frustrated because I needed some answers because I've never felt pain like that before in my life,
Yeah.
and I couldn't see.
Yeah.
And finally, I made a phone call to a therapist, and I said, I don't know what's happening, but the medical people don't know what's wrong, and I'm still pooping and peeing myself, and I'm in excruciating pain, and all they're giving me is medication, and it just makes me sleep.
Yep.
It was, and I think it was neuropathy is kind of what they came up with.
Okay.
But the therapist sent me to a doctor. And now I know she was a holistic doctor.
Okay.
And after 3 months of laying in bed in excruciating pain with my eyes swollen shut, I was referred to this doctor, and she had, I don't know what she did, but she brought me in that day and got me in right away. And then she had me come back at night, and she is a chiropractor, but it wasn't long before I had the ability to walk again, and I had my eye opened. It wasn't swollen anymore. I went to eye doctors. They still couldn't. My vision came back. And I'm talking within 2 months. Yes.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that pain as long as I live.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of the symptoms today from that.
Good.
Was it from drugs and alcohol and coffee and 4 energy drinks a day, Adderall,
Yeah,
I don't know, abuse. I'm not sure. Whatever it is, I'm grateful for that doctor. And that therapist that sent me to that doctor. And at that time I couldn't work, and she hardly charged me anything.
Yeah.
But I ended up going, so I did go back to work after that, and
right on.
I went in and not for very long, and I put in my month notice. That company was amazing, and all the companies that I worked for during the abuse and everything else were phenomenal. I have a lot of, I still talk to most everybody that worked there, and they're great people. And I'm appreciative of, because goodness, I don't even know how I kept my jobs. But anyway,
well, and a lot of times when you leave a company, there's this strain and things like it just doesn't even need to exist. And that's cool that they didn't put that on you. That's nice.
I gave appropriate notice,
Yeah.
So after that, I did get, I started feeling better, and I went back to the bar, and I was fortunate to have my family, and my son, and, my daughter, and my son's best friend, and everybody there, that were helpful, and my ex-husband, my kid's dad. And I ended up moving in with my kid's father. They let me stay there because I couldn't work. And I also lived with a friend, but there was something that I sat in that room for a long time, because I knew that I did not want to go into another abusive relationship. I didn't, so my ex-husband sent me to the family member that had gotten sober through AA, and I got to go up there, and I was, I sat there and I chain smoked and cried outside. She had a lot of losses in her life, or a loss in her life, but that's what I remember. And on my way, you can't imagine that my health was really great, but on my way driving up to Delta, I had a cold, and I always had bronchitis because I smoked so much, but I lost my voice, and I mean, complete laryngitis. It wasn't just a little bit, but I lost my voice completely up driving up there because I was coughing so hard. And so the whole weekend that I was with this woman that, that I had partied with, that looked gorgeous, that had quit drinking, I couldn't say anything, which was probably the best blessing of my whole life, because I always have a lot to say. And listening wasn't my best skill. And to be honest, as I was sitting there crying, smoking my cigarettes, I probably heard, it sounded like womp, 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 womp. And that's no lie. My head was so
Yeah.
fogged from the
Spinning.
drinking, the drugs, the pain,
Yeah.
and there was another family member up there at the time. So it was, I felt good, but she had handed me the AA book and a Jesus Calling
Okay.
and said, and I definitely didn't have any sort of faith. I don't know if you're an alcoholic, and I tried to listen to her the best I could.
Yeah.
But if anybody, I would at least listen to her. So I came back with this. She didn't mention meeting. I think I did go to my first AA meeting, but again, I was in a fog. I only heard a little bit.
Yeah.
I just knew that I had a little bit of hope. I think the bottom line is that the message of hope was passed on to me, and not only was it in that book, it was through her, because I couldn't, to know that how we drank, to see her sober was pretty miraculous, and her, and for the tragedies that she had been through, for her to stay sober was even more miraculous.
Oh yeah.
So I went home, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I probably put the book away. I'm sure it was on a shelf. So I know I did. And my ex-mother-in-law had, introduced me to Grace Church, and when I was hungover, let's go to church. And I knew my life was dysfunctional, but I couldn't fathom truly being an alcoholic, because I would compare everybody else's drinking.
Yes.
So, I went to, I started seeking God. I started learning, meditation. But there was something else that came into my life. There was a guy, and he was somebody that I was in love with in junior high.
Okay.
And he had, in my world, this man was everything to me. So if there's anybody that could have, and it was one day I was sitting on the floor, and I had discovered Facebook, and I don't know that the man, ever came into my mind much at all, but he did, and I friended him.
Wow.
And again, he not right away, but he accepted my friend request, and I got invited to some of his events, and I think that deep down in my soul, I knew that that there was going to be a change before he came into my life.
Sure.
But to this day, I honestly believe that God brought him into my life, because there would have been nobody else in the world that I would have ever loved enough to change the things about me, because I was ashamed.
Hallelujah.
While I was at least with him.
Yeah.
And I have a respect for this man that goes beyond words. And he was just like this light in my life. And I'm grateful to him today. We did not carry on a relationship, but he was at first, I don't think I even felt shame, to be honest, until I was with him. And I knew that that if I ever got the opportunities to be with him, that I would want to be the best person I could possibly be.
Sure.
That was it. I wanted to be, I would have taken on the world. And that was, those were the two people in the start of my spiritual journey. And it's been beautiful. I mean, my journey without him being much of a part of it, or once I started seeking a higher power, before I even went into the rooms completely of AA, I think is when my higher power showed me that there could be this happiness that was beyond this
Yep.
lifetime.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my ex-mother-in-law and my ex-father-in-law gave me a place to be able to sit and ponder that, where I couldn't pay, but I did what I had to do. At least I took walks, and I got
Okay.
a little bit of my health back, and finally I decided to go into the rooms of AA.
Okay.
Well, when I took the book down from the shelf, I started reading it. I made a lot of amends on my own before I went into, I just did what the book told me to do. I don't think
Yeah.
right or wrong, I'm not sure, but and some of those amends were really hard because I
Yeah.
actually had a conscience, this conscience that was overwhelming. And the more that I let my higher power in and I started seeking God, I wasn't scared anymore,
Yeah.
And during this time, I did start going into the room. My mom got ill.
Okay.
And once I ended up having to move out of my ex-husband's to go take care of my mother. So
Okay.
if you can imagine trying to take care of somebody that I've hated my whole life.
Yeah. And starting the program.
Yeah. So I didn't
That's a
stick
tough
around.
nut.
Yeah. So I didn't want to move, but I did. And I moved into my mom's, and she had the start of Alzheimer's and COPD.
Okay.
So I took my book and I went to my mom's, and I couldn't stay sober completely. I mean,
Okay.
I just remember, I mean, I flirted with sobriety. I went in and out of the rooms, but I wasn't really that committed. I was more worried about other things.
Yeah.
And she, the sicker she got, the harder it was, but I had time. I had enough time to, I didn't go anywhere. I mean, I tried to do what she needed. I was her primary caretaker for quite a few years.
Okay.
But I did finally go into, there was one day that I was trying to clean for her, and I realized that I was a very selfish person because I couldn't do it her way. I was going to fight my mom to the bitter end. But I did make an amends to my mom.
Okay.
And I sat at the table, and I remember making this amends to my mother, and I was cringing. I was cringing the whole time because I never wanted to, but because she was sick, I didn't want her to die, knowing that I didn't want her to die, and I didn't want to hate her anymore,
Yep.
So I finally went into a meeting of AA, and it was on Kipling. And I had a choice. It was either McDonald's, Starbucks, or this church. And I chose the church. And I sat in that room.
Yeah.
And it was a Sunday night. And I remember sitting there, and I was just hurt that my mom was dying.
Yeah.
But I listened, and I tried going to. Then I started going to the room's primary purpose.
Yeah.
And at that time it was on 44th, and
Okay.
there were women that bought me books to different programs. Al-Anon introduced me to adult children of alcoholics.
Yep.
And wow, I resonated with adult children of alcoholics. It kind of deterred me away from my alcoholism because it was gambling and family dysfunction. And so I latched onto that program quickly while I was taking care of my mom. And I put a good year into that program because I knew that I had a gambling problem, and I knew that I probably had no boundaries. Boundaries weren't even a thing.
Yeah.
Boundaries, yeah, they weren't. It wasn't. I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah, I wasn't very good at them.
Yeah, I was pretty convenient to the average male,
Yeah.
if I needed to be. But something happened, and I ended up going. I couldn't fully. I stayed at my mom's, and I was heartbroken because the man I loved didn't love me back. And, I did this whole thing for him. My mom's dying. I don't have money smarts, and my mom was definitely an alcoholic,
Yeah.
and a very angry, miserable person. And I had to take care of the mom that I hated, even after I made amends. But she wanted me to do like some responsible things. I could pretty much be responsible in the work area, but
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do finances.
Okay.
My credit score was 2 something. I filed bankruptcy 4 times.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
No, it's
At
not.
the time, I didn't know it wasn't normal, but I guess to the normal average person, it's not a normal thing.
That's right.
So, I've met a lot of powerful women at Primary Purpose, and
Yeah.
I was very obsessed with quitting smoking because I had gotten an opportunity to get, when I was good in my spirituality, or my journey with God, to get to experience what it was like to be smoke free. And I started smoking at US on Wheels when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And it was a birthday present. I got a birthday present. It was Virginia Slims, and I was 12 years old at that. I got to take my
mine
first
was
drink.
Marlboro Red. So
Yeah. First drink at US on Wheels, and
the
my
first drink,
smoking addiction. Yep. And it was a Friday night thing. And anyway, so I got a little taste of what it would be like to have to smell good. I don't know.
Yeah.
And to have to, you grow up in it. Your mom does it. That's what I knew. Everybody
Yeah.
did it back then. But my eyes, I had gotten some relief, and some, relief from some of the fog of that I knew that cigarettes were killing my mom.
Yeah.
And I could put poison in my body for a very, very long time. Alcohol, drugs, pills, whatever it is. And it didn't bother me. It
Yeah.
didn't bother me. And when I started going into Adult Children of Alcoholics, they started talking about self-care.
Yeah.
And I think between the time that I got that relief from that addiction to the self-care, and then started learning boundaries, I was very aware of what wasn't good or bad for me anymore, or what was bad. And but I there was no giving cigarettes up at that time. I mean, I still wasn't completely sober, and I was devastated by the fact that my mom was dying.
Yeah.
And I had to be her memory and her everything for those 4 years, along with my daughter. She was very helpful. So anyway, so Adult Children of Alcoholics started teaching me boundaries. Well, and then Alcoholics Anonymous was trying to get me sober. And I kept going into those rooms, apparently saying I wasn't an alcoholic, because I couldn't relate, and I wasn't going to get a sponsor. But eventually, I did get a sponsor, and I went through my steps pretty quickly, which was good. 3 times. I still relapsed. But I remember all of it, and I remember, working my steps, and getting some relief from the 3 husbands, at least. And she was teaching me, during my 4th step on, how convenient I was to a man, what my sex life was like, and why I was in the situations that I was for the husbands that I had. And so there was some relief, but there was, I went up to Central City one day when I was the whole, in those years that I was sitting there wondering why I didn't get the man that I loved. And, I got enough relief from AA and primary purpose that,
Uh-huh.
um, I went up to Central City and I took my mom's card, and I had stolen money so I could gamble.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, this has to be the end, because I'm not going to steal from a sick woman.
Yep.
And I picked up the phone and I called a friend from primary purpose, and
Yeah.
he said, you need to get off the phone with me and you need to call this woman. And I was terrified because this woman had some stand-up sobriety.
Oh,
And he's like,
oh.
and you need to tell her that you lied. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Okay.
And I was shaking in my pants.
Yeah.
I was dying. And I'm like, this woman is gorgeous. She's beautiful. And I have to call her, and she's going to yell at me. But I had this urge, and I
Yeah.
did it. So I did. I picked up the phone and I
Wow.
called her, and that was the start of my true sobriety.
Yep.
Um,
Wow.
so yep, I told her the truth, and I started going to meetings regularly. I guess it takes what it takes to start, removing that brain fog.
Yeah.
To a normal person, they're probably like, you're insane. I know I am, and
Yeah.
I know I was it. And it took God, and it took a sponsor, and it took
Yep.
people of
Yep.
AA and people in, adult children of alcoholics, to, women that had some stability, to just get my mind to get a little bit of sanity.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it takes a tribe to get sober.
it
It
took an,
does.
it
Yeah.
does.
And we need to have some humility. And for me, humility is just asking for help, asking God for help, asking my fellows for help, saying, I need help.
Yeah. Yeah. What I was lacking, and it took me 2 years to get, it took me 2 years to get 6 years of sobriety, I would say.
Okay.
Going in and out of the rooms. I didn't want to give up the lifestyle, the party, who does?
Yeah.
I didn't want to give up some dysfunctions, and nobody ever really told me I had to. They said, if you're not done, go, and I was like, oh, really? But another turn of events was, I was standing outside, and if you had my problems, you would drink too,
Yep.
As I was relapsing, even after I picked up that phone, I had a woman that had been in sobriety for quite a while. And I said, my mom is dying and blah, blah, blah. And I was standing outside, and she looked at me and she goes, I don't care. She goes, I do not care what is
Yeah.
happening in your life. She goes, you need to get in there. And she was very firm, stern, and not very nice about it.
Yep.
And she put me in my place, and she said, you need to get in there and get sober. And I was absolutely like, how dare you? Do
Yeah.
you know? And lo and behold, now I know I was just a victim to my life.
Yep.
And she saved my life that day. She didn't care about my feelings. She cared about my life.
Yeah. She cared
And
about you more than you did.
yeah, and she knew a lot more than I did, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Now,
Got to respect those old timers.
oh
You
my
do.
God,
They deserve all the respect.
don't
Even
they?
if sometimes they seem grumpy or they're mean.
Yeah.
You know what? Every single person in that room wants me to be better.
Yes.
That's all
And
they want.
I wanted my family to make me better, and
Yeah.
instead it was, the tough love woman that did care more about my life.
Yeah.
Because she knew I was either gonna go out there and live a life and die. But it was really hard for me to hear that all of those big problems and all of the abuse and everything else, what I couldn't, I couldn't use that anymore.
Yeah.
So I went in and I got sober. And there were many, spiritual awakenings and beautiful things that had happened. And yeah, once I got it, I got it.
Yeah.
And what got me up and working again was, I kept asking some of the women in the program, like, hey guys, I have this debt, and I don't know what to do with it. And
Yeah.
some deep down inside, I knew that if I got the answer that I get to go file bankruptcy, that I would definitely run with that. I mean, why not? My credit score was two
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
3 marriages, 4 bankruptcies, and just yuck. And that I at least had enough good sense to I went to the bank, and they did tell me to file bankruptcy. Some of them did, but I went to the bank and I pulled my credit report, and I was at Wells Fargo, and they said, you need to start paying off your banks. And
Yeah.
I knew that in the book it said we do not balk, so
Yeah.
there was not one financial amend that I wasn't going to make.
Yeah.
So I paid off, and I'm still paying off.
Yeah.
I paid off my banks, and
Yeah.
I went, I started working in a restaurant to pay those off. And
Okay.
I relapsed in the restaurant because somebody offered me some alcohol and drugs. How dare they? But
That's
I guess
okay.
whatever it takes
Yeah.
to whatever relapse I needed to get me to realize how powerless I was over alcohol, drugs,
Yep.
and money management. And I
Yep.
just wanted to be a teenager that floated around the world.
Yeah, I still do. I want to be a Toys R Us kid, but
Yeah.
it's not plausible anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, not much. I've enjoyed my sobriety. I've you learn. You got to stay teachable.
Yeah.
I one day at a time. I've definitely made some mistakes along the way. I
Yeah.
had a great, I've gotten to experience a relationship in sobriety. And it hurts to first of all be very honest.
Oh.
And it also hurts to do the next right thing sometimes.
It does.
I've learned that I don't always get what I want, and sometimes that makes me really mad.
Yeah.
I'm on
Me
a
too.
I'm on a journey that I hope will last for the rest of my life. um you know I'm grateful to everybody. I
Mhm.
sponsor, I do what I can to get out of myself as much as possible.
Yeah.
Life is completely different. I am smiling from the inside out, and it doesn't matter if I have that guy anymore.
Aw.
It's I've learned that I'm thankful
Yeah.
that God showed up in my life, because
Yeah.
God took away God got I gave I everybody, God gave, taking the people away that I needed. He gave me room to learn how to be honest, and then he also showed me that I got to build a relationship with my higher power, and that filled that hole.
Yeah.
And that I don't have the desire to drink or drug today.
Yeah.
So now I don't have to look to a man or another person for that anymore.
Yeah.
And that relationship was really the best relationship I've ever built in my life, because
Yeah.
I got to learn to surrender.
Yep.
Yeah,
Hallelujah.
and I hope that there's great things to come.
Yep.
So yeah, that's my sobriety in a nutshell, and it's worth everything. But I what I learned is the easy way out, and what I want to do, and the decisions that I make are not the definite path to put me in sobriety. So yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And I hope that for people struggling out there with abuse and everything else, that there is an answer. There's
Yeah.
there's a place to go, and life can be beautiful today. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I good, bad, or indifferent, I wake up
Yeah.
happy. And in
Yeah.
the hard times, and the family, you know I think one of the best things about my sobriety is I was very estranged from my maiden, or my immediate family, not my
Okay.
children, but my mom's family. And we've had a lot of family members that have died, and I get to sit around a table I get to show up and I get to go to those funerals.
Yeah.
And it means maybe to the average person, you know, crying with your family is just another funeral, but to me it means everything that I get to be there.
Yep.
So yeah, so I am grateful to be clean and sober today, and yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
thank you
Thank
for letting
you.
me be on your show.
Absolutely.
And happy Valentine's Day again
And
to everybody.
happy Valentine's Day. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I even go as far to tell people that I am grateful that I'm an alcoholic. And I'm grateful that I'm an alcoholic because I can't think of any other reason in my life why I would have sought for God, because God is my number one relationship. It's my most successful relationship. And I get to base my other relationships off of it. And what's neat is then I get to love people the way they want to be loved.
Yeah.
Instead of the way I decide how they're loved. And I can see them and see what they're doing and be like, they would appreciate this if something was done. Or if I hear somebody talking and I hear progress, I'm gonna say something because we're usually the last people to notice progress in ourselves. So I like letting people know and say and encouraging it. I'm proud of you. Good job, man. I don't care how much time they have. And that's what I love about AA. I need the brotherhood. I need the sisterhood. I need it. I need my tribe, or like the first tradition says, without our unity, we got nothing.
Yep.
So, but thank you again for being on. I do my little Jerry Springer thing here at the end where I do a little bit of wrapping up about what we've learned today. And I think it's really neat. There are a lot of things in your story that I felt a part of, and your story is kind of like mine in a way. I mean, it's different, but I can still see those similarities of doing this and doing that and trying to get in. I had a slip during my 4-step. I relapsed 22 times in 2 years. So, but it took what it took. So when people tell me that relapse and slips aren't a part of recovery, not in my experience. My experience says something different. Maybe not in their experience, but that's okay. So let's end it with this. There is one that has all power. That one is God. May you find him
now.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. You know I love all of you. Peace out and have a day.